So in this next part, I have decided what it is that I'm going to use for each one of these rows. So this first top row is going to have 5 different textures, all using pen. The next row is going to have 5 different textures using graphite. And the final row is going to be charcoal. The reason I put charcoal at the bottom is because charcoal tends to have a lot of dust that comes off of it, graphite a lot less, and pen does not have anything. So any mess that happens below this, and I can easily clean that up instead of having my work damaged or the surface get gray or get any sort of charcoal where the pen's going to go. So I'm going to start with the pen on top. The choices that you have is either using a ballpoint pen that looks something like this. This is just a regular ballpoint pen. They're very common. And this is a Micron pen or a technical pen. There's different brands of technical pens. This one just happens to be a Micron brand. It's a pretty common technical pen. It's really useful. So when I'm doing this, since I've selected the textures, I'm just going to go ahead and do one, and then you'll get a sense of how it is that you want to approach, how you should approach it. And then I'm going to do one of graphite and then also one of charcoal, and that should give you the idea of what it is that you should do for the remaining spaces. So in this case, instead of using the ballpoint pen, I'm going to use a technical pen. The texture that I'm going to do is a texture that kind of resembles metal, a metal that has a type of texture that typically found on industrial sites. So it's just essentially hatching. So the hatching in this case, I'm just going to do 4 marks and then go opposite to that, and then go opposite to that. Kind of like a checkered pattern. Right, so when you're dealing with texture, when it comes to drawing, essentially the definition is the texture and pattern are interchangeable. And that's the definition, is the look and feel of something. So we can't feel this texture, but we can sort of interpret what it might feel like if we were to touch it, right? So the idea here is that we're creating these textures, or the illusion of a texture, but it's more of a pattern. With texture, we want to be able to describe what it looks like, what it feels like, what it might feel like. And in this case, all you're trying to do is learn your tool, you learn your media. In this case, the medium is ink, and the tool that we're using is a technical pen. So pretty quick, and we would just keep this going. You can change the size of this if you want, just to create a little bit more interest in the composition. I started a little low and small, and now I might change the scale, make things larger so that it creates a little bit of movement in the composition. I'm thinking about the way that the entire square sort of functions, and trying to make it look more visually appealing. That's what composition essentially is. It's the arrangement of elements within an image space. The image space is this binding square, and the elements for this piece are little hatching marks. And I can be very meticulous about this, or a bit more chaotic. I'm trying to stay a little bit organized. And I fill the entire thing. The next one I'm going to use is graphite. So graphite has 6H. The ones that we're using is 6H, 2B, and a 6B. Notice these are all different brands. The brand does not matter. What matters is the type of media that it is. This is graphite, so it should be interchangeable. There's this also, and graphite is what you would commonly find as a regular number 2 pencil. All right, so with graphite, we have different options. We have the ability to then push the media a little bit more. We want to get a sense of what it has the potential to do. So starting with the 6H, kind of hear it a little bit, and it gives you a really light value when you put it on. I hold it back here to control the pressure, so I don't press too hard. The closer I get to the tip of the pencil, the more control I have of it, but also the more dense the lines become, the harder I can press. So if I hold the pencil back here, I can control that value a little bit better and just sort of back off from it. So for this texture, what I'm going to do is just the value shift, essentially, and have that value shift sort of change as it grades through the composition. I'm going to switch now over to the 2B. So that was 6H, and you'll notice the 2B, how quickly it starts to get darker the more I press with it. All right. I press harder, it gets darker, but if I press too hard, it'll start to burnish the surface, which makes it shiny, and then it becomes kind of reflective. And then the last one that I'm going to use is a 6B. And the sound, even when you're putting it on the paper, it sounds a little different. So I'm imagining this texture as being something that sort of like a sound wave almost. So now that I have some value down there, I'm going to start pushing things around to get a little bit of variety in the marks, and then to push the medium a little bit. So there's different types of textures. Some textures that we can easily describe like this can appear to be hatching, can appear to be some type of metal that is used for industrial purposes. Sometimes you find it on the side steps of trucks, things like that. This one, a little less descriptive, but it still counts as a texture. It is also a pattern. It's a shift of value. It's mark making. So any mark making is technically considered that texture or pattern, something that we describe as feeling, looking like. I'm going to end it back with this 6H. Now this can also be pushed around a little bit with this blending stump. So this blending stump I'm going to use specifically for graphite only. Cannot use it, once I use it for graphite, I cannot or should not use it for charcoal. They tend to not like each other. This blending stump, what it does is it pushes the medium around and it softens the transitions between those values. So instead of using your finger, use a blending stump. You'll end up with clean fingers. If you use your fingers, you end up with dirty fingers. Just finish off the composition here, and I'm going to add some marks here with my 6H just to get it a little bit more visible. That is the same mark transitioning. Like something that you might find in a heart monitor or something. The 6B, I'm using it here. Notice how quickly that 6B gets dark. So when you're doing this, try to push the pencil to do different things. Force it to go on its side. You can go a broader edge, come up on top of it. You can also swirls, tight little swirls, create more value. And if something feels like maybe you need to edit it, you can use a series of erasers. So you have hard eraser and you have soft eraser. The kneaded eraser usually comes in a little square. It looks nice and neat, but the idea with a kneaded eraser is that it can softly remove media. So in this case, the medium that we're going to remove is graphite. We can just press it down and it just lightly removes some of it. It's really great for cleaning things up as well. So if something isn't working, we can take it back. We can also modify it so it only takes out specific little areas. We can cut pieces off of it. And they can go back on. Eventually your kneaded eraser will probably look like a little black ball. Something that's kind of a little disgusting. But all this needs to do is be pulled apart, mushed back into itself. This is essentially kneading. So once you've kneaded this eraser, you can merge it with this other one and I can continue to use it. Right? Another way to do it is you turn it into something like this and then roll it, or do that. So I've almost gotten rid of most of my drawing. I can come back maybe with a 2B and re-emphasize some of this stuff so that my texture is still visible. So charcoal, a little bit different. You can still erase it with this kneaded eraser. In this case, I'm just going to keep a little piece. The charcoal, looks like this. So there's charcoal pencils. There's soft, there's hard, there's medium. This one you can barely see the text here, but these are all charcoal pencils. Artist Loft makes a hard one just as well as Generals. The only difference that I've noticed is some might be slightly warmer than others. If you get some, just get the whole set. But they are interchangeable to some degree. So for charcoal, I'm gonna go in this case for something more like maybe a wood texture, and I'm going to start with soft, and I'm just going to look at my reference and try to mimic those marks, right? Starting off very big in general. Thinking about the way that these lines are going to work in this space to create the illusion that it's a piece of wood that we've sliced, and now we're looking through all of its rings. So I like to shave my pencils, especially the charcoal ones, with a long lead so that I can hold it back here and be able to not only use it this way for a more technical purpose, but also use it this way for a more sketchy purpose. When I'm feeling things out, when I'm pushing the pencil around this way, I'm more certain when I'm pushing the pencil around this way. So I have these soft areas. I'm going to make a couple more marks, and then I can use the blending stump, and I would use a different one to give me some value in here. I can soften these lines so that there's some that are a little bit soft, some that are a little bit hard. I can push the medium a little bit together to create the illusion of variety in these certain areas, but leaving some areas light just to see what happens. I can do the same thing with graphite. It's just the difference is the way that the medium is pushed. Charcoal is a lot softer and it gets a lot darker. Charcoal is great for using it on things that are large. So using a charcoal stick for large drawings tends to look really good. Graphite looks good, but it's a lot more time consuming because it's a medium that is intended for something small, and it's really good at this scale at 11 by 14. Works really well. Any larger than that, you need to put a lot more effort, but it's doable. You can get charcoal sticks as well as graphite sticks. So I can go with the medium. Let's try this other pencil, see what it does. So the medium charcoal, it's a little bit harder lead. That just gives me a little bit more definition in certain areas. And obviously the hard lead would give me even more control. Sharper lines, sharper areas. It doesn't move around as much as the soft charcoal. So if you want your drawing to be quick and sort of soft, use soft pencil. If you want sharp edges, and I think we're going to include some sharp edges here, this hard pencil will give you that. Right, so I'm holding this really close to the tip so I can get some sharpness. I just wanted to create a little bit of variety with the values so that things look a little bit more balanced here. All these marks that I'm making look a little bit more balanced if I move things around. And always good to step back, blur your eyes out and see how things are working together in the composition. And as you go further in the drawings and you get a bit more complicated, you're going to be doing a lot of squinting and stepping back to check proportions, to check value arrangements. And just to see if you like what you're doing. And that's basically it. Make sure you have some references. Don't try to invent this. It's not necessary. It's best to have some reference to begin with, and as you develop your visual language with drawing media, you'll be able to come up with more ideas out of your imagination. But until you do that, try to use references.